Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're opening up something pretty remarkable, actually. It's an operational blueprint. Feels less like a typical political strategy doc, and honestly more like a detailed engineering plan for securing power in Nepal.
That's a good way to put it.
In this blueprint, it's clearly emerging from the intense energy of the Gen Z revolution there. Nepal's really standing at a critical crossroads.
That's absolutely right. And the source material we're looking at today, it is unique. It doesn't just, describe the feeling, the revolutionary sentiment. It actually tries to map out the practical steps. How do you translate that raw energy into real, sustained, structural political control?
Yeah.
And we're focusing specifically on the most ambitious path described, what the sources call the electoral path playbook. So our mission today is really to dissect the mechanics. How could a digital-first political force realistically secure a massive two-thirds majority mandate, and potentially very soon?
Right. And securing two-thirds. That's not just a number for them, is it? It's framed as an absolute prerequisite for, total systemic transformation.
Exactly.
The playbook seems to suggest that this kind of mandate, it requires blending these modern data-driven tactics, the kind we've seen used effectively by big parties in neighboring India, for instance,
right.
But blending that with the very distinct, almost moral clarity that seems to define this Gen Z movement in Nepal.
Precisely. For this movement, according to these documents, a simple majority, that's seen as a dead end. It's perceived as a guarantee of gridlock, of compromising with the, let's say, the old guard. The ultimate goal is systemic change, real change. And that requires the kind of constitutional authority that only a two-thirds majority can provide. That's the legal threshold you need to implement really sweeping reforms.
Yeah.
Things like constitutional amendments, fundamentally rewriting governance laws.
Wow.
And maybe most critically, institutionalizing these permanent tech-driven anti-corruption mechanisms. The sources actually call this the vaccine against corruption.
A vaccine against corruption. Okay, we need to remember that phrase.
Yeah.
So let's start by unpacking this mandate for a brand new party. Why the insistence on building from scratch? There are existing political structures, aren't there?
Well, the sources are very clear on this. It stems from the core requirement of what they term the Gen Z mandate. The feeling is the revolution was fought to completely eradicate corruption, chaos, impunity, not just to, shuffle the same old politicians around.
Right, not just rearranging deck chairs.
Exactly. So the belief is absolute. Justice has to come before any election. That's non-negotiable.
And that kind of uncompromising demand for immediate justice, for total transparency, that's why the existing parties were seen as unsuitable.
Precisely. That's the argument presented. Initially, there was apparently a window, a potential path maybe, to restructure the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the RSP. The sources sort of sketched out this idea of a clean leadership core emerging, maybe centered around respected non-political figures like, say, Kulman Bising as chairperson, perhaps with strong public backing or involvement from popular figures like Mayor Balen Shah, Harka Sampang.
Okay, on paper that sounds potent. A kind of dream team, blending integrity and huge popularity. So what happened? Why did that possibility dissolve?
Well, the immediate trigger, according to the sources, was when a prominent RSP figure, Swarnam Weigel, publicly dismissed this idea of a radical restructuring. That sort of closed the public window.
I see.
But the deeper analysis in the material we have goes beyond just that moment. The conclusion drawn in these documents is that the current RSP structure, despite its, recent electoral success, is already seen as compromised.
Compromised how?
Dominated by entrenched internal hierarchies, political debts, things reminiscent of the old system it claims to oppose. So the judgment call in the source material is that the overall structure was just inherently incapable of meeting the movement's demand for a truly corruption-free, digitally transparent political entity.
So the thinking is, if the party isn't structurally pristine from day one, it basically forfeits its moral authority to lead this revolution.
That's the logic presented, yes. So if existing structures can't offer that genuinely clean slate, can't guarantee that institutional integrity, then the only path forward, according to this playbook, is creating a new force.
Okay, a new force.
Yeah.
And this can't just be a collection of famous faces, right? It has to be built differently. The sources mention 3 foundational, non-negotiable tenets.
That's right. These 3 pillars are presented as defining the party's very existence. First, it must be digital first and totally transparent, meaning transparency guaranteed through technology. The playbook insists quite strongly that Every single financial transaction, every donation, every bit of organizational funding, it all must be documented on a public ledger. And it explicitly mentions using blockchain technology for that, for immutability, for continuous public audit.
Okay, so radical transparency built into the system itself. That's the structural guarantee against future corruption, then.
That's the idea. It's meant to be preventative. The second tenet tackles that endemic problem in the region, patronage, dynastic politics.
Right.
Correct. Second, the party must be ruthlessly meritocratic. Positions, leadership roles, who gets to be a candidate, it all has to be earned. Purely based on verifiable contribution, demonstrable performance, tracked through KPIs, which we'll get into.
KPIs.
There's zero room, according to this plan, for inheritance, for patronage, for old-style political loyalty trumping actual competence.
And the third tenet, this sounds like where the philosophy comes in. Kalkiism. That's a term we probably need to define a bit.
Yeah.
It seems to elevate this beyond just being anti-corruption.
Precisely. The third pillar is that the party must be ideologically grounded in Kalkiism. And this is described as a very deliberate, integrated philosophical fusion.
Fusion of what?
It merges, on one hand, aggressive frontier-style economic innovations, specifically looking at digital cooperatives, leveraging technology for job creation, with, on the other hand, a deep layer of spiritual ethics and a strong commitment to comprehensive social justice programs.
Hold on. Economic innovation and spiritual ethics.
Mm-hmm.
How do those two, which sound quite different, actually come together in practical policy terms?
Yeah, it's an interesting blend. The sources define the spiritual ethics part not as, say, religious dogma, but more as an operational philosophy, rooted in Dharma, which they interpret here as duty, accountability, and the absolute reduction of self-interest in public service.
Okay, so duty and accountability.
Right. And this ethical grounding is meant to guide the implementation of the technology. For instance, the demand for blockchain transparency isn't just presented as a smart technical choice. It's framed as an ethical mandate, enforced by technology, ensuring every public servant's action is, in theory, accountable and auditable in real time.
I see. So the ethics drive the tech choices.
That's the connection made. And this provides the intellectual heft, apparently. The party is meant to partner closely with something called the Kalkiism Research Center, or KRC, to translate this philosophy into detailed, actionable policy blueprints.
Okay, KRC.
Got it.
And all of this context, this deep thinking, it all leads back to that really ambitious goal.
Yeah.
The two-thirds mission. We know why they think they need it, but let's consider the operational side. Why commit to what seems like the absolute hardest path politically?
Because the stated goal isn't just reform, it's to dismantle the entire system that they believe enabled decades of corruption. Only a two-thirds majority gives a party the power to unilaterally amend the Constitution. And the sources list several critical areas they believe need amending. Things like the constitutional provisions around appointing anti-corruption bodies, how the judiciary is selected, the entire legal framework that governs how political parties are financed.
So fundamental stuff.
Absolutely fundamental. Securing this huge mandate is framed as the difference between just achieving temporary political success, maybe a term in office, versus enacting permanent institutional transformation, the kind that's resistant to being rolled back by future government.
Okay, permanent change. That makes the two-thirds target make more strategic sense, even if it's incredibly difficult. So if this new party has to embody meritocracy, integrity, it needs a structure, a governance model that actively prevents the old political habits, the chaos, from creeping back in. The sources introduce this really interesting idea, the 11-11-11-11-11 framework, described as a skeleton.
Yeah, this framework is presented as a pretty radical, maybe even elegant solution to the typical problems of political centralization and infighting. It's designed for rapid, legitimate scaling and crucially based on total consensus at each step.
How does it work?
It starts locally, very local. 11 individuals get together, say, within a single polling booth area or maybe a village ward, and they have to unanimously elect one leader from amongst themselves. Just one.
Hang on, unanimity, 100% consensus. In a place like Nepal, known for political fractures, doesn't demanding unanimity at the very first level just sound like a recipe for immediate gridlock? Paralysis. Seems like that would slow things down massively.
That's the critical tension, isn't it? And the sources actually address that directly. The insistence on unanimity is described as deliberate. It functions as a kind of purity test, a pre-screening mechanism.
A purity test?
Yeah. The logic is, if that initial group of 11 cannot agree, if they're too dysfunctional or too factionalized right at the start, then they're deemed unfit to represent the meritocratic ideals of the movement. The process simply halts for that group until a genuinely unified cell can form. It forces consensus built on shared values, not on, transactional horse trading.
So the goal isn't just speed, it's about guaranteeing ideological alignment and legitimacy right from the grassroots level up.
Okay.
What happens after that first election?
Then it scales vertically. 11 of those newly elected local leaders, the ones who pass the unanimity test, they then meet. And they have to unanimously elect the next tier leader. This repeats upwards through 5 distinct levels in the proposed model, ultimately leading to the selection of the national leadership.
5 levels of unanimous election. What's the big picture outcome of building the whole organization this way? Layer by layer, all based on local consensus and merit.
The intended outcome is a self-organizing, transparent, and theoretically highly legitimate hierarchy, one that extends from the tiniest village unit right up to the leadership of the global diaspora chapters. And the sources claim, maybe optimistically, but claim nonetheless that this entire structure could be fully activated and populated in just a matter of weeks.
Weeks? That's fast.
It is. It's designed to completely bypass the usual chaotic political infighting, the centralized, top-down appointments that often rely on patronage or who you know. It aims to ensure every single leader at every level has the verifiable consensus, the backing of the 11 people directly below them.
Okay, so the 11-11 model builds the skeleton, establishes this supposedly legitimate leadership structure, but to actually win that two-thirds majority, you need boots on the ground, operational muscle, discipline. And this seems to be the crucial role of the booth committees, mirroring some successful models we've seen elsewhere.
Yes, exactly. The operational core, according to this playbook, must be the smallest possible administrative unit, the polling booth area, or maybe the village unit. The source material explicitly points to the highly granular, very successful operational structure used by, for example, the BJP in India as a kind of blueprint. Every single polling station needs to be transformed into a micro-operational command center.
A command center at each booth. So what exactly are these micro units doing day to day? It sounds like they're the heart of the movement's data discipline.
They really are. They're responsible for everything that directly touches the voter. Their critical local tasks include constant data collection and validation. This is absolutely key for building and maintaining what they call the single voter file. SVFs.
SVF, okay.
They also manage the local volunteer rosters. They organize crucial local events, small meetings, tea gatherings, that sort of thing. And critically, they run the absolutely vital Get Out the Vote, the GOTV operations on Election Day itself, making sure every single committed supporter actually casts their ballot.
So if the 11-11 model is like the brain and nervous system,
then the booth committee is the hands and feet, doing the actual work on the ground.
let's drill down into that SVF, the single voter file. Just so you, the listener, can grasp the level of detail here. What specific data points are these booth committees supposed to be legally compiling and constantly updating in Nepal, according to this plan?
The SVF is positioned as the core strategic asset. The data points need to be really granular and actionable, going way beyond just name and address. It includes things like verified phone numbers, preferred communication channels, does this person respond better on WhatsApp or Telegram? Detailed notes on the voter's specific local concerns. Maybe it's bad road, lack of jobs, water issues, their propensity to vote. Are they likely to turn out? And crucially, who is specifically responsible for ensuring they physically get to the polling station on Election Day?
Wow, that's detailed.
It's relentless data collection, continuous, highly localized, and forming the basis for very targeted, hyper-personalized communication later on.
You absolutely cannot execute something like that without intense operational discipline. The sources detail a booth captain training checklist. It sounds almost military grade in its focus.
It is very focused on operational efficiency and ideological clarity. The training is designed to instill the core identity, which is symbolized by this motto: discipline, data, Dharma.
Discipline, data, Dharma. Okay, break that down.
Discipline refers to the almost regimented completion of daily and weekly tasks. No excuses. Data is the absolute commitment to the accuracy and completeness of that single voter file. And Dharma, in this very operational context, signifies the commitment to meritocracy and impartial duty to the movement's core anti-corruption ethos. Service without self-interest.
Right, the tasks themselves are super granular, right? Very specific.
Precisely. Daily tasks for these booth captains are designed to be low friction but high volume. Things like recruit 11 new members or contacts for the SVF. Post one positive story or verified fact on social media or local WhatsApp groups. Weekly goals are more ambitious. Organize at least one physical gathering, could be just a small tea meeting, a chat with local youth, and ensure 100 or more new voter registrations or updates to the SVF in their area. They're the engine driving the organization's expansion.
And finally, the tools they're expected to use. This is where that digital-first idea really hits the ground level.
Right. The captains are trained to be digital organizers, not just traditional political volunteers. The training includes mastering tools like WhatsApp Business for sending segmented messages to different groups, using robust CRM systems or even standardized Google Sheets for managing their part of the SVF effectively, employing simple graphic design tools like Canva for creating instant localized posters or social media graphics.
Canva for politics. Interesting.
Sure. And furthermore, the sources really emphasize leveraging AI tools, things like ChatGPT or Google's Gemini, for crafting quick, locally relevant messages, stuff that avoids political jargon and speaks directly to the specific concerns of people in that particular booth area.
Okay, so we've got the local architecture, the 1111 skeleton, the booth committee muscles. Now let's turn to the engine that fuels it all. How do you actually convert the massive, often quite chaotic public support for this Gen Z revolution into a measurable, verifiable database of contacts and do it at scale? The answer in the playbook seems to be this missed call campaign.
Yes. This is presented as a textbook example of a low-friction opt-in funnel. It's a strategy that's proven powerful for scaling political movements, especially in high-population, mobile-first environments like Nepal.
How does it work? Simply.
The mechanism uses the simplicity of the basic phone system. A single, really memorable phone number is advertised everywhere: posters, radio spots, social media ads, even simple flyers. A person sees the number, makes a quick call, hangs up before it connects a missed call. That simple action serves as the complete opt-in.
The genius, like you said, is it overcomes that friction barrier.
Yeah.
We're all used to clunky websites, having to fill out complicated sign-up forms. A missed call is instant. Zero effort required from the supporter.
Absolutely zero effort. And that's a crucial strategic decision. It instantly provides a verified phone number, which is the key ingredient, remember, for that single voter file. And it does it at massive scale, bypassing the high drop-off rate you get with digital forms.
Right.
The call logs themselves, instantly sortable by the phone number's area code, become the essential seed data for the SVF. That data is then fed directly, almost in real time, to the corresponding booth committee captain for local follow-up.
Okay, so the number is captured, but then the system needs to follow up immediately, right? To turn that initial, very passive interest into something more active, into engaged membership. This must require a pretty robust auto-dialogue system and a strategic messaging stack.
Yes, the follow-up mechanism is designed to be immediate and automated. That missed call triggers an instant auto-response, usually an SMS. It might contain a verification link, or just a brief, personalized thank you message. This dual system, getting the call log and sending an SMS confirmation, helps increase the quality and verification of the captured phone number.
Makes sense.
Once verified, the contacts are immediately segmented automatically and added to microgroups on platforms like WhatsApp or Telegram, based strictly on their geographical location derived from that phone number's prefix.
And these microgroups, these WhatsApp or Telegram groups, they become the main communication channel. Why rely so heavily on these encrypted messaging platforms rather than, say, traditional email lists or just public social media feeds?
For two critical reasons, according to the sources: localization and persuasion. These closed groups serve as the primary local persuasion channel. Communication feels more intimate, more trustworthy, because it's often managed or moderated by the local booth captain, who people might actually know or recognize.
Ah, the local connection.
Exactly. And perhaps more importantly, these platforms allow for closed-loop messaging. You can control the narrative much better at the micro level, and content shared within these trusted groups is far more likely to be forwarded, to be shared among known contacts, which is way more effective for persuasion than just broadcasting on a public Facebook feed, for example.
Okay, so to feed all these thousands of localized microgroups, you need a serious content factory, running at maximum efficiency, pumping out material. What specific kind of content does the playbook demand? Stuff that can actually cut through the noise and the cynicism that often surrounds politics.
The content strategy described prioritizes three things: speed, trust, and localization. The demand is for rapid production of extremely short video clips, think 30 to 60 seconds max, designed for vertical viewing on phones, easily shareable, and crucially, every single piece of content must have localized language variations, not just standard Nepali, but versions in the major regional dialects to ensure it penetrates deep into rural areas where standard Nepali might not be the first language.
And the themes. What are these short, localized videos actually about?
They seem to focus on three core areas. First, authenticity through real stories of corruption victims, putting a human face on the problem they're trying to solve. Second, clarity with simplified manifesto explainers, translating the potentially complex ideas of Kalkiism policy into very easy to understand bullet points or animations.
Right.
And third, maybe most importantly for building trust, daily micro-reports, little updates detailing what the party organization did today. This is all about enforcing transparency and countering that common critique that politicians only talk, they never actually do anything. They are constantly trying to show the receipts, show the work being done.
This whole relentless data-driven approach, it really shifts the relationship with the supporter, doesn't it? It's about converting that passive interest from the missed call into active contribution. Which brings us to the volunteer economy. How do they propose maximizing the sheer manpower potential of this youth movement?
Yeah, the genius of the volunteer economy, as described here, is utilizing all that enthusiasm efficiently through easily trackable microtasks.
Microtasks.
Yeah, small, decentralized, low-risk actions, things that typically require only 5 or 10 minutes to complete. Examples given include sharing a new 30-second video clip on 5 of your personal WhatsApp status updates, or inviting 5 neighbors or friends to make the missed call to the campaign number. Or maybe accompanying one elderly voter in your neighborhood to help them get registered correctly in the SVF system. Small, specific, doable tasks.
Okay, and how is that meritocratic identity enforced here? How do you make sure the person actually doing these microtasks gets recognized, rewarded, over someone who just happens to know a guy on the central committee?
Through rigorous, verifiable key performance indicators, those KPIs again. Booth leader performance and even individual volunteer performance is tracked precisely, not subjectively. Metrics include things like the number of active volunteers under a leader completing their microtasks, verified attendance figures for local events, and critically, the completeness and accuracy of their section of the single voter file.
So it's all measurable.
Exactly. High performers are publicly celebrated within the organization, maybe highlighted in internal communications, and crucially, they gain priority consideration for future leadership roles or even spots on candidate lists. This mechanism is presented as the ultimate enforcement tool for that meritocratic identity. It's designed to completely separate this new party from the old systems of patronage and nepotism. Performance is what matters.
All right, let's talk about the fuel for this entire digital machine.
Yeah.
The money. The sources strongly identify the Nepali diaspora in Nepal living abroad as a absolutely key strategic and financial asset.
Oh, the diaspora is critical in this plan. You know, the Nepali diaspora already contributes a massive share of the country's GDP just through remittances sent home.
Huge numbers, yeah.
So this represents an immense pool of not just potential financial assets, but also often highly educated, organized, and politically motivated professionals scattered across the globe. It's a powerful network of skilled potential advocates and organizers. To execute a national campaign on the kind of technological and organizational scale described here, tapping into that global resource pool is seen as entirely non-negotiable.
Okay, so how does this playbook actually propose organizing such a massive, globally distributed resource? What's the specific structure needed to manage money, manage manpower, across all these different time zones and continents?
The strategy laid out demands establishing formal Nepal Merit chapters. These are envisioned as dedicated fundraising and networking hubs set up in every major global city where there is a significant Nepali diaspora presence. Places like London, New York, Melbourne, Delhi, Doha, Hong Kong.
So official branches abroad.
Pretty much. And these chapters are tasked with channeling both professional skills, maybe tech expertise, legal advice, and of course, financial contributions back to the campaign in Nepal.
And the funding model itself.
Yeah.
It has to align perfectly with that core value of, blockchain level transparency we talked about earlier. How does the playbook propose raising capital while completely avoiding the usual pitfalls, the secrecy that often surrounds big single donor political contributions?
It mandates a very deliberate shift to a compliant subscription-based crowdfunding model. Think small, affordable, repeatable microdonations. The example given is maybe $5 or $10 per month per person.
Small amounts, but potentially for many people.
Exactly. This provides a stable, predictable, and crucially, a politically clean income stream. When you aggregate thousands of these small monthly donations from across the global diaspora, it can become a massive amount of funding. And critically, the system must utilize blockchain receipts or some kind of open public digital ledger for continuous, maybe monthly audits of all donations received and spent. This commitment to transparency as trust is presented as paramount. It's designed specifically to overcome the deep cynicism that international donors often have about where their money goes in traditional Nepali political funding.
Okay, but managing thousands of $5 micro-donations coming in from multiple countries with different banking regulations, different political donation laws, the legal compliance must be a potential nightmare, right? How do the sources suggest they maintain strict legality across all these jurisdictions?
Yeah, that's acknowledged as one of the most technically challenging aspects. Strict compliance is presented as mandatory, absolutely essential for maintaining legitimacy. It requires specialized legal teams, both in Nepal and potentially advisors familiar with laws in key diaspora countries.
Right.
The organization has to ensure all its fundraising activities are legally compliant with Nepali law regarding foreign political contributions, which often requires very precise declaration and segregation of those funds. And simultaneously, they have to be compliant with the host country's charity laws or political donation laws. Think about U.S. FEC regulations, UK Electoral Commission rules, Australian laws, etc.
Complex.
Very. It likely requires utilizing officially registered party wings abroad or perhaps affiliated, fully compliant nonprofit organizations, NGOs, to manage the flow of funds legally. This is all about safeguarding the movement's integrity right from the start, avoiding any legal scandals.
Okay, so beyond just money, how do these global chapters contribute operationally? It can't just be about wire transfers, can it?
No, absolutely not. They're meant to leverage their geographical distance and time zones using sophisticated operational tactics. For example, diaspora volunteers can run targeted phone bank nights.
How would that work with the time difference?
Well, they use time zone scheduling strategically. Volunteers in, say, North America could make calls to Nepal during Nepal's peak evening hours when people are home, which corresponds to their morning hours. This allows for efficient, targeted outreach to specific voter segments identified in the SVF back in Nepal.
Clever.
They also host monthly virtual events, global online rallies, Q&A sessions with leaders to sustain organizational momentum, keep the diaspora connected and motivated. It helps make the movement feel truly global, not just something happening only in Kathmandu.
Okay, this sophisticated machine, the structure, the funding, it all needs a credible, unifying figurehead at the top. The playbook seems absolutely unequivocal on who must chair this new digital party, Balen Shah. He's positioned as the moral nucleus, the undisputed first choice for the political leadership of this movement.
Yes, Balen Shah is identified repeatedly in the sources as the strategic necessity. Why? Because he's seen as offering instantaneous moral legitimacy and proven competence. He represents that non-dynastic, merit-based ideal that the party is supposedly founded upon.
And his time as mayor matters?
Critically. As mayor of Kathmandu, he demonstrated very publicly a decisive style of action. He turned political speeches, particularly the anti-corruption rhetoric, into measurable physical results. Things like the rapid removal of illegal structures, institutionalizing new levels of city-level transparency. People saw him doing things, not just talking.
What is it about his specific appeal, though, that makes the sources believe he's the only one who can really institutionalize this whole movement?
His appeal seems uniquely broad. It bridges practically every key demographic they need: the urban, tech-savvy middle class, the often disaffected rural youth, and crucially, the global diaspora respects him. He's seen as the personification of this anti-corruption zeitgeist.
So the argument is,
The playbook argues that his immense personal popularity must be institutionalized. How? By having him formally chair this new party. The idea is to transform his personal, almost revolutionary mandate into a stable political structure that the youth and others can rally around long term. He provides the credibility nucleus, recognizable worldwide, that holds the whole thing together.
okay, so if Balen Shah is the face, the unifying leader, then this Kalkiism Research Center, the KRC we mentioned, that's positioned as the policy engine, providing the philosophical depth and the actual technical blueprints needed to govern if they win.
Exactly. The KRC provides the intellectual foundation required to actually satisfy the revolution's demands, going beyond just slogans like "end corruption." They offer what's framed as a detailed systemic framework. Remember that phrase, the vaccine against corruption.
Right.
Their proposals aren't meant to be abstract ideals. They're based on implementing auditable, enforceable systems to replace what they see as failed human checks and balances.
Let's dive into that systemic change a bit deeper. What specifically does the KRC blueprint detail to achieve this promised zero corruption state? This is where the technology really has to deliver on that ethical mandate we discussed.
Well, the core mechanism proposed is radical transparency, but enforced ruthlessly through technology. The framework mandates a zero-corruption environment, primarily by using AI and blockchain,
Oh.
for continuous, real-time auditing of every single significant state transaction. Think procurement contracts, government salary disbursements, infrastructure spending. The system is designed to automatically flag anomalies, conflicts of interest, suspicious patterns, essentially removing subjective human intervention from large parts of the audit process.
That would be a genuine game changer if they could actually build and implement it reliably. And how does the KRC framework tackle the huge issues of economic instability and lack of opportunity in Nepal?
It addresses economic stability primarily through guaranteed job creation, but achieved via state-supported digital cooperatives and a heavy focus on growing the digital economy. It's a move away from relying solely on traditional industries or foreign aid.
Digital cooperatives, okay.
And critically, it proposes comprehensive free basic health and education. But the funding mechanism is key. Financed not through traditional borrowing or uncertain aid, but transparently via new digital tax revenues and potentially state-managed data monetization schemes, linking the new digital economy directly to tangible social justice deliverables.
Fascinating. Okay, finally, let's look at the Manifesto for Transformation. To have any chance of earning the incredibly ambitious two-thirds majority to cut through decades of political cynicism, the platform has to be short, bold, and instantly measurable, right?
Absolutely. The manifesto, as outlined, is distilled into three core, unmistakable, and highly actionable pillars. 1, zero tolerance corruption, backed by the technology we discussed. 2, jobs in the digital economy. 3, free health and education.
Simple, clear pillars.
And crucially, to demonstrate immediate credibility and intent, it must also include a concrete, high-impact 100-day plan, something they promise to deliver right after taking office. The sources suggest potential deliverables like filing, say, 50 major high-profile corruption cases against powerful figures within the first 100 days, and the mandatory launch of a fully public online asset registry, making the wealth declarations of all public officials instantly traceable by anyone.
Wow. Those are definitely measurable actions. Actions designed to prove they're serious about dismantling the old system, not just managing it differently.
That's precisely the intention outlined.
Okay, so what we've really analyzed here today, it's far from just a simple populist uprising. This is it's a strategic masterclass in many ways. A highly detailed, almost engineering-like blueprint for trying to transform that raw revolutionary passion into a very disciplined, data-driven electoral machine, rooted in grassroots organization, fueled by global resources.
It truly is a comprehensive organizational model being proposed. The entire strategy really hinges on successfully integrating that ground-level organizing, the purity test of the 1111 model, the disciplined booth cells, with those very low-friction digital recruitment tactics, like the missed call campaign.
Right.
And it's interesting whether the movement, according to the sources, pursues the more direct revolutionary path, maybe an interim government led by KRC ideas, or this electoral path we focused on, justice first, then a new party under Balen and KRC. The underlying architectural demands seem remarkably similar.
How so?
Both paths seem to require the same fundamental commitment: the total dismantling of the old system to establish a new Nepal, one free from corruption, casteism, chaos, guided only by transparency and merit, enforced by structure and technology.
So connecting this back for you, the listener, the key takeaway here seems to be that political power, perhaps in this new age of digital mobilization, isn't something you just beg for anymore, nor is it simply inherited through family or connections.
No, this blueprint suggests it has to be built. Built through relentless microorganization, through obsessive data discipline, through traceable, credible promises, and crucially, through a genuinely meritocratic structure that rewards verifiable contribution above absolutely everything else.
And this, I suppose, raises a pretty profound question for the established political order, not just in Nepal, but maybe regionally as well.
Exactly. When a movement approaches the challenge of gaining power with this level of detailed, technologically enforced strategy, does the old guard, operating with traditional methods, even possess the tools necessary to compete effectively? It feels like a different game entirely.
Yeah.
The revolution's core message, as presented in these documents, remains stark. The time for halfway measures is over. Either we build a corruption-free Nepal now using every tool at our disposal, or we risk losing another generation. The very introduction of this highly strategic digital-first blueprint suggests the political establishment there might be facing an existential adversary unlike any they have ever encountered before. Something to really think about.